the early morning hours of March 25, 1944, a British Lancaster bomber was burning at 18,000 feet over Germany. The fire had spread quickly. The crew was preparing to bail out. Inside the rear turret, a 21-year-old tail gunner rotated his position toward the fuselage to retrieve his parachute. It was already on fire. The pack was ablaze, unusable, gone. The aircraft around him was also burning. He had no working parachute. He had no way out that ended well, except one. Sergeant Nicholas Alkemade turned back toward the open sky, released the turret doors, and fell into the darkness below. No parachute, 18,000 feet over enemy territory. He was also, against every calculation of probability, about to survive. By the middle years of the war, RAF Bomber Command had become one of the largest military operations in British history. Tens of thousands of aircrew flew sustained campaigns against industrial and strategic targets across Germany and occupied Europe, primarily at night when darkness offered some concealment from German air defenses. It rarely offered enough. Bomber Command lost more than 55,000 aircrew killed during the war. A standard tour consisted of 30 operations. Many crews did not reach that number. Within a bomber crew, the tail gunner occupied one of the most exposed positions. In a Lancaster, the tail turret was a separate perspex enclosure at the very rear of the aircraft, isolated from the main fuselage. The gunner sat surrounded by 4.303 Browning machine guns, flying backward, watching the sky the aircraft had already passed through, responsible for defending against the German night fighters that hunted the bomber stream in darkness. Nicholas Alkemade had been doing this work with 115 Squadron, based at RAF Wychford in Cambridgeshire. He was 21 years old in March 1944. The mission on the night of the 24th into the 25th was not his first. It would be unlike anything that had come before. The target that night was Berlin. The operation was one of the largest raids on the German capital during the war. More than 800 aircraft crossing into heavily defended airspace under cover of darkness. The Lancaster carrying Alkemade, designated DS-664, flew with the stream. The raid reached Berlin. The return flight began. It was on that homeward leg, somewhere over Germany, that the night fighter found them. German night fighter crews had developed effective methods for intercepting RAF bombers in darkness, approaching from angles that minimized their visibility to defensive gunners. The precise details of how DS-664 was intercepted are not fully documented. What is known is that the aircraft caught fire. The fire spread through the fuselage. The crew was ordered to bail out. This is when the sequence that should not have ended in survival began. In a Lancaster, the tail gunner's parachute was not worn during flight. It was stored inside the fuselage, accessible by rotating the turret inward and reaching through the entry door. When the bailout order came, the gunner retrieved the parachute, clipped it to his harness, and exited. Alkemade rotated his turret. He reached through the door. The parachute pack was on fire. The fire had taken hold inside the fuselage before he could retrieve it. There was nothing to clip onto his harness, nothing to deploy. He was at approximately 18,000 feet. The aircraft was burning. He had two choices. He could remain inside and face the fire, or he could jump. Jumping without a parachute was not survival, but it was faster. It was on his own terms. It was not burning. Alkemade chose to jump. He turned back toward the open sky, released the turret doors, and fell. The fall from 18,000 feet takes approximately 90 seconds in freefall. The air at that altitude in March over Central Europe is bitterly cold, temperatures reaching -20 or 30 degrees Celsius or lower, with the wind of freefall adding to the exposure. The sky that night was dark. Alkemade could see nothing of the ground below. He later described the fall as quiet once the burning aircraft receded. He was falling. He could do nothing about it. He lost consciousness at some point during the descent. He did not experience the moment of landing. What he did not know, as he fell, was what lay beneath him. The area where he came down contained sections of forest. Pine trees stood under a heavy accumulation of winter snow. The snowpack was deep. Alkemade came down through a stand of young pine trees. The branches slowed him as he fell through them. The snow beneath, soft and deep enough to give rather than resist, absorbed the rest. He landed. He was alive. His injuries were a sprained knee and minor cuts and bruises. He found his cigarettes. He lit one and waited for daylight. German soldiers found him when morning came. He was confirmed as an RAF airman and taken for questioning. The first question was straightforward. Where was his parachute? Alkemade told them the truth. He had jumped without one. His parachute had been on fire. He had fallen from altitude without any means of slowing his descent, and he had survived. It was not believed. The German personnel were applying a reasonable understanding of physics. A man falling from 18,000 feet without a parachute did not survive. The claim was considered either a confusion of events or a deliberate misdirection. The interrogation continued. The account did not change. His medical examination showed no serious injuries, which was, in its own way, as difficult to explain as the story itself. The German authorities decided to check. Investigators went to the crash site where Lancaster DS-664 had come down. They examined the wreckage carefully, looking for physical evidence that would either support or contradict Alkemade's account. What they found was the parachute pack, still inside the fuselage, in the location where the tail gunner's parachute was stored. Burned in place, not deployed, not jettisoned, destroyed by the same fire that had consumed the aircraft. The physical evidence confirmed the account. The parachute had not been available. The story that had seemed impossible was consistent with everything the wreckage showed. The authorities documented their findings formally. They produced a signed statement, confirmed by Gestapo personnel, acknowledging that Sergeant Nicholas Alkemade had fallen approximately 18,000 feet without a parachute and survived. The document noted explicitly that this was, to their knowledge, without precedent. They gave the document to Alkemade. He kept it. He remained in German captivity for the remainder of the war and was repatriated to Britain after the German surrender in May 1945. He settled in Loughborough in the English Midlands and worked in industrial employment in the post-war years. He was not a public figure. He was a working man who had survived something working men were not supposed to survive. He spoke about his experience when asked. The account was documented and verified on multiple occasions across the post-war decades. It did not depend on memory alone. The crash site evidence, the German document, the medical records, and the RAF records all told a consistent story. Nicholas Alkemade died in June 1987 at the age of 64. He had lived long enough to see the events of that night recede into history, and to know that what had happened to him on March 25, 1944, had been recorded, confirmed, and preserved. What this story holds does not fit neatly into a standard category of wartime survival. It is not a story of exceptional skill. Alkemade did not engineer his survival. He made one decision, not to burn, and the outcome was determined by geography, weather, and the specific configuration of a German pine forest on a cold March night. None of those factors were within his control or his knowledge. He chose the fall over the fire. That was the entire decision. What followed was simply what happened. The survival of an 18,000-foot fall without a parachute is one of the most precisely documented personal accounts of the entire Second World War. It was verified by the people who most needed to disbelieve it, confirmed by physical evidence, and recorded in writing at the time it occurred. Not every story from that war has documentation this clear. Alkemade's does. He fell. He survived. The record says so. If accounts like this, precisely documented moments where history comes down to a single person and a decision made in seconds, are the kind that stay with you, consider subscribing. These are the stories worth preserving carefully. Share your thoughts in the comments below.